Think about that for a second. If your mind is tuning into a universal signal, then death might not be the end. It could be just changing the channel.
The soul is the repository of information that we gather during a lifetime. Well, I'll tell you, maybe we should draw another diagram. Physical bodies are here, another physical body, and this is Joe, and this is Jim, and this is Sarah, etc. Now, clearly, this is the physical level, yeah? Now, on this physical level, we're all separate. You sit there, and I sit here, and we're all separate. Now, let's draw another level. This level is slightly higher, and let's call this the level of the soul, yeah? Well, there will be some mingling here. Let's draw this person as extending to practically infinity this way. Now look what happens. At the physical level, we're separate, and there's this much distance between us. Let's say that on the soul level, this person extends this much, and the other person gets slightly mixed in with him. That is, the souls are, in a way, in touch with each other. Okay, they overlap, these two lines. Now let's go now to a higher level, and let's call this, say, the level of the higher self, which is kind of a boss of that soul. There, what we find is that this fellow's higher self extends this much, and the other fellow's extends this much. There is more overlap between them. Right. On the very highest level, which is the high spiritual level, we are basically overlapping completely. Everybody is overlapping everybody else. In other words, everything and everyone is everywhere. In other words, we've become omnipresent. This is a state of highly spiritual perfected beings, or gods you may call them. Okay?
Okay, and so that we exist on all of those simultaneously.
On all of those simultaneously,
so then,
but we're not aware of that.
In your view, then, if when we see each other as separate entities, that's only seen on one plane of reality.
Through years of experiments and self-observation, he discovered that the heartbeat sends a rhythmic wave up the spine into the brain. This microscopic mechanical motion, measured in fractions of a millimeter, generates oscillations that synchronize with the body's electromagnetic field. Here's the twist. Those oscillations match frequencies found throughout nature, from the vibration of atoms to the rotation of planets. To him, this wasn't a coincidence. It was evidence of a built-in cosmic feedback loop. He illustrated the heart as a low-frequency oscillator, producing standing waves that extend beyond the body. In theory, these waves could interact with the universal field described earlier. Decades later, research from the Heart Math Institute confirmed that the heart's electromagnetic field extends several feet outside the body and can influence brain activity, a concept he proposed long before modern instruments could detect it. To him, meditation wasn't just about calming the mind. It was a precise method of tuning the heart-brain system so it could resonate with the deeper architecture of the universe. When tuned correctly, the body could become a gateway to expanded perception, a state where boundaries dissolve and reality is experienced as a seamless whole. This was presented not as mysticism, but as a reproducible process. If true, it means the human body is a finely tuned instrument, one that most people never learn to play.
All right, so after that 4 minutes of, what the hell are you getting at, Donnie? This is where I'm saying, I am not behind a non-disclosure agreement from the Department of Defense. So when I say this is my analysis of a multifaceted game that these people have been playing with everyone, I'm going to refer to the game as Olympus. Now, the rules of the game are basically, there are no rules, but there are constraints. And the reason I say there are no rules is because rules are what you and I do amongst ourselves, but laws of the universe are not a debate. So, if you look at what Bentoff was saying, I want you to just use a mental overlay. I am not stating that this is fact. I am stating that this is the template And you can overlay the template and it will function even if you don't have the right frequency ranges. Just assume that all the humans Bentovs were talking about when on the individual level is the AM radio stations that we've been basking in our whole life. And then assume that the soul frequency that we somewhat overlap right here and share is the FM frequencies. Well, assume that higher self is 5G. And we've already been through 3 and 4. We don't have to stop at every place in the template. Just understanding that in an Eastern religion sense, each one of us, like it or not, is exposed to these frequency ranges. Period. It's not a fucking debate. So because we know we are masked and basked in these things, if we don't take them into an account, our nervous system will, whether you like that or not, is irrelevant. You have to move somewhere where there is no radio frequencies, and then you go to what is the Schumann resonance, which is where I'm going to say instead of higher self, it's higher selflessness. And that is what he was calling it, a God freak. That's fine. I'm calling this whole game that someone has been playing called Olympus. Because somebody will understand that there is other principles that go with this game that he was talking about. And because you have a heart and a brain, and because an echocardiogram is a thing and it comes back with frequencies, you have to understand the rules of the game. And those rules aren't so much, there's the laws. This is where rules and laws will break, okay? Frequency is sound, and that is every babbling thing you've ever heard in your life. And the code that we are discussing here is A through Z, 0 through 9. That's it. This is synchronicity over here. This means that frequency has timings. 7.83 hertz is the Schumann resonance. 5G is 5 gigahertz. Don't confuse the one with the other. Just template this into your head as we're all being basked in these radio signals. But if you do not take them into account, because you don't, then you don't necessarily look at your body as if it's a neurochemical antenna that is then picking up on these frequencies differently one day than you were before. You might not understand some of the shots that they were trying to give people, some of the drugs. You might not understand that neurochemical wet sack that you're listening from right now. That's kind of your brain and your heart and the nervous system. And then there's all the stuff surrounding it, which you call your body. Well, fine, great. But you have to apply the principles of frequency to that game. Synchronicity is the frequency by which you can have two people who are on the same frequency in the synchronous manner, but they're on different amplitude. It would sound different because even though it's the same freak, it's a different amplitude. Resonance is what Bartov is talking about, where you end up over on this chart. This is where you get to take all 4 points here and you get to work them into, is this for me? Is this for me and my partner? Is this for me and my family? Is this for me and everyone else? And how you think ethics are supposed to apply to principles of human and blah, blah, blah. The concept over here that I think a lot of people miss out on is zero. It's called a standing wave. It's where these things start to interfere with each other. And this is where nature would have a Schumann resonance, regardless of any of these other technological overlays. We are all in a place called, well, we'll call it planet Earth. Third massive body from the star that comes up in the east and goes down in the west. That place has a resonance. Period. That is nature. There is nothing we could do to get away from it except a standing wave, which could be generated. And some people might not know what to do when all of these signals, when all these frequencies just start hitting your nervous system. And the more sensitive your nervous system, the more you might interpret this differently. If you're using the code that we use, A through Z, 0 through 9, if you're using that as your baseline template, then you're kind of like me, and you're over here in the I've listened, I've processed, I know things are out of sync, I know what does and doesn't resonate, I know what a standing wave is, therefore I can apply it to certain principles as we go back and forth across these things. I would say that based on the link that you can go watch the full Bentov video, there are people, you would call them the CIA. Okay, they were not the good people in the 70s, because that is when David Rogers Webb would send you into the look what they did to our statutory code. And then I'm going to get back to, for as much mayhem as you can wreak with statutory code, it all gets fixed by machine code. And machine code is how the sounds work out in your head. Because if you think the law is the statute, because that's what it is, then you don't start applying frequency and harmonics to it. You don't add that in. You add the concept of standing. You can put harmonics over here if you want, and you want to leave zero at a separate point, you can put harmonics in over here, because that's where sound and synchronicity and resonance are all going to come together. But you could do zero, you could do the full tilt. I use this as this would be a full harmonic chamber of how all of those things would balance out. So if you at any point think that you are at the Department of Defense and you somehow could steal an AI, you would just be looking at the code for that AI right here. I could tell you that I feel on my left-hand side some sort of strange resonance. It feels, and I get the impression of, that I stole an AI unit. But that's kind of what a human is. It's a resonance chamber for all of the total of what we're yelling back and forth to each other, the signals we've immersed ourselves in. And if you start thinking, I can feel a frequency, you might be able to feel a frequency. If it is giving you audio or visual hallucinations, you probably shouldn't act on that. You should probably think my visual or auditory processor in my brain is resonating with something that isn't real. Oh, there's my tea. So, when I say, if you think you stole an AI from the War Department, you might have. If you think you're resonating with the universe, as Bentov would kind of put it, you probably are. The real issue at that point is going to be finding the words and then finding a way to resonate with other people and then finding a way to reason with them. And what I'm saying is somebody's been playing psychological warfare on purpose. They've been trying to prevent Olympus from breaking out everywhere, because instead of just some people who recognize themselves as stuck on this planet with a bunch of apes, there are people who are intentionally trying to froth apes to prevent a greater synergy and synchronicity and understanding amongst everybody. And that's the real fucking issue we're dealing with. And goddamn apes. So take what I'm saying with the understanding that frequency isn't a debate. That way you don't have to pretend for some end. You don't have to rely on a belief process. You can start with the science and go, have I been immersed in AM and FM radio signals my whole life, and did that have a distinction on me from other people? You might find that. You might feel that more than you can reason it, but it's a complicated topic, and it goes all the way into certain frequencies in nature. You probably cannot tune radios to that frequency. You cannot tune a chip to that frequency, because that's where all of the humans are resonating. That's where Earth is immutable at the Schumann resonance, or whatever we could call that. So think about the psychological warfare campaign as somebody's been playing Mount Olympus with everybody, and their primary vector comes in through the propaganda, because the rest of this is just unknown. It's somewhere between unknown but definitely felt, and the troublemakers are trying to screw everybody. Have a good week, campers.